Hello, my name is Christina Jimenez,
And I'm Josh Floyd.
and today we are going to be talking to you guys about summer visitation within 100 miles. We're kind of going through the series. We're breaking down where we are breaking down the standard possession order in Texas. Sometimes it gets really confusing if you're not used to practicing a standard possession order, and so we thought it'd be pretty cool to kind of break this stuff down for you guys. So as always, we're starting out with kind of definitions and kind of the jargon that we're going to be using while we are going through all of this. So Floyd, why don't you explain managing possessory, 100 miles, all that good stuff.
Okay, so we're talking about, like she said, standard possession order. Sometimes we call it SPO. But when we're talking about it, we're talking about managing conservators versus possessory conservators. For the purposes of the possession schedule, we'll be referring to the person that has the exclusive right to designate the primary residence as the managing conservator, and the person exercising visitation would be the possessory conservator. And today we're doing summer visits for under 100 miles or for parties that reside within 100 miles of one another. So that's what we're doing today.
All right, cool. Okay, so summer visitation under 100 miles can be pretty simple, can be pretty complex. So I guess let's start with the notice provisions. Okay, so if you are the possessory conservator, which means that you're the parent that is entitled to possession and access, you have to give notice, or you have the ability rather to give notice on or before April 1st of each year. And if you give notice by April 1st of each year, you can designate 30 days that you want to exercise your period of possession. And so you can break it down in different ways. You can have 7 and 23, you can have 10 and 20, 15 and 15. However you guys want to break it up, you can break it up. It has to be a minimum of 7 days for the period of possession, and it can be no more than 2 periods of possession. Cool. So if you designate on or before April 1st, your period's possession would begin and end at 6 p.m. And obviously it has to be done in writing. I tell all my clients, make sure that you're sending an email, you're sending a text message, maybe you're sending a certified letter if you can. And if you have somebody who's a little bit tricky on the other side, you probably want to send it in all 3 ways, right? So that there's no issues or no discussion with regard to whether or not you gave sufficient notice. Okay. So Floyd, what happens if you do not give proper notice?
Before I go to that, on the written notice issue, a lot of times in the orders, it'll define what written notice is, and it's different for each order. Here recently, the past couple of years, we've seen a lot more, text messages and emails counting as written notice. Some of the older orders may not, and they may require, a certified mailing. So make sure that you read the written notice provision in your order and comply with that when you're giving notice for your summer vacation. If you don't give notice by April 1st, then the possessory conservator gets visitation beginning July 1st and ending July 31st that year. It's just 30 days consecutive. They don't get to break it up, so they don't get to go in and pick their days, right? They're chosen for them. So if you don't give notice, you still get summer, but you get July 1st to July 31st, beginning and ending at 6 p.m.
Awesome. So that's for the possessory conservator, right? So the person who has the right to a period of possession and access. The managing conservator, who is the parent who has the exclusive right to designate the primary residence of the children, or the parent that the children live with primarily, right? They also get to designate weekends during the summer break. And so if the managing conservator designates on or before April 15th, they can elect 1 weekend during the 30-day period of possession that the possessory conservator is otherwise entitled to. Okay, so I know that's a little bit confusing. So let's say that the possessory conservator does not give notice by April 1st. Then the possessory conservator would automatically have the whole month of July, right? That's your default period of possession. So that would give the managing conservator the ability to elect 1 weekend during that July period of possession. Okay. And if they had broken it up into 10 and 20 days, right? So let's say 10 days in June and 20 days in July, the managing conservator could elect one of those weekends during those days that the possessory conservator had elected. So you do have to pick up and drop off from the possessory conservator. Okay, and this is actually something that was enacted a few years ago, where the possessory conservator has to tell you 15 days in advance of the pickup and drop off location. And I think the reason why they were doing this is because, let's say that the possessory conservator decided, hey, we're going to go to Disney World during these 2 weeks. And the managing conservator says, well, I want to pick our children up for this weekend. If the possessory conservator had to come all the way back to Texas in order to pick up and drop off, that would obviously be a problem. So if managing conservator wants to pick up and drop off or exercise that weekend visitation, and the possessory conservator is in Disney World or at Disney World, then the possessory conservator would say, okay, well, if you want to exercise this weekend, here's the address of where we will be staying in Florida. You need to come and pick them up, and you need to drop them off at that same location. Beginning and ending times would be at 6 p.m. beginning on Friday, ending on Sunday. Did I get that right, Floyd? Am I cool?
Yes, I believe so.
Cool. Okay, so they also have the ability to designate another weekend. Why don't you explain all that?
So the next weekend they get to designate is really their extended summer possession, right? I always tell my clients that first weekend is just so the managing conservator is not having to go 30 days without seeing their child, right? So it's just a weekend break during the possessory conservator's summer possession. The next weekend that the managing conservator gets to designate is their extended summer. And so what they get to do is, in the last videos, we discussed that even during the summer, the possessory conservator still gets their first, third, and fifth weekends, right? So the managing conservator gets to take one of those weekends away. And so for the example you were using, the default provision, so let's say the possessory conservator doesn't select, but goes to the default a month of July, then the managing conservator could designate the first, third, or fifth weekend in June as their extended summer possession. And by taking that weekend away from the possessory conservator, it essentially gives the managing conservator like 3 weeks in a row of consistent possession for their extended summer possession. That notice, if you don't give it by April 15th, it's fine. You just have to give 14 days written notice. The other one, if you fail to give by April 15th, you lose it. And this notice also, your extended summer possession for the managing conservator is the same as the possessory's in that it cannot begin any earlier than the day after school's dismissed, and it can't end any later than 7 days prior to school beginning. And I think that is it on that.
Yeah, I think so as well. So the only other thing that I would say is that you cannot designate Father's Day. And so, and it depends, right? So if you are the managing conservator and your dad, then obviously if you want to elect that weekend or that falls into your period of possession, then wonderful. But if you're mom, you can't specifically elect that weekend that you want to exercise during the summer possession, because the holiday period possession or the Father's Day possession is always going to supersede any designation that you can make for the summer period possession. And so I think that kind of breaks down the summer as simply as we possibly could. Our big thing is number one, pay attention to these dates. I always tell all of my clients, make sure that you're setting alerts on your calendars and on your phones to make sure that you have plenty of time to make those designations, because it is very discouraging when those dates pass and you haven't made that election the way that you're supposed to, and then the other side is being difficult and not wanting to cooperate. That can be a little bit discouraging and potentially ruin some summer vacations, and we don't want that to happen. So make sure that you're designating by April 1st, and then if you're on the other end of this thing, you're designating by April 15th. And hopefully this will help everyone have a very smooth smooth and successful summer vacation. As always, we always tell you guys, if you are in this predicament and you're trying to go through this standard possession order or navigating any sort of complex litigation in family law, make sure that you're reaching out to a good local attorney that specializes in family law or knows a lot about family law, so that they can kind of guide you, interpret your order, because your summer visitation may not be a standard possession order and you may not realize that. So it is important that you're referencing your orders at all time, and that you have a good attorney that you can visit with. Thank you.
Thank you.